What's happening, Packer fans? Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can always follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Had the idea for today's video a handful of days ago, and I'm thinking in my head, well, that should be kind of a fun topic, and it should be fairly easy to go through. My idea was to go through the top 25 players that Green Bay will play this upcoming season, and thinking like, all right, I'll go through the players. It wasn't difficult to find the players. The issue is that there were far too many really good football players, and one, narrowing it down to 25 players was very difficult, and two, then ordering them from 25 to 1 was even more difficult. So needless to say, Green Bay has a lot of talented players that they're going to be facing this upcoming season. Obviously you're adding a full game into the schedule, so now you're facing 17 teams instead of 16, which just adds another layer of talent on top of things. So I'm going to go through it. Let me start by giving my honorable mentions. This is a crazy list of talented players that didn't even make the top 25 players that Green Bay will be facing this upcoming year. Michael Thomas, the wide receiver from the Saints, Minkah Fitzpatrick, the safety from the Steelers, Bobby Wagner, the linebacker for the Seahawks, Harrison Smith, safety for the Vikings, Marshawn Lattimore, the corner for the Saints, Denzel Ward, the corner for the Browns, Akeem Hicks, defensive lineman for the Bears, Chandler Jones, edge rusher from the Cardinals, Ronnie Stanley, the offensive tackle, the really good offensive tackle from the Ravens, Cameron Jordan, defensive end from the Saints, Alvin Kamara, running back from the Saints. A lot of Saints on the honorable mention list. Jessie Bates, probably the one that I really wanted to get in, but it was so hard. He's such a great safety, but didn't get him in. Safety for the Bengals. Eric Kendricks, linebacker for the Vikings. Cam Hayward, another player that absolutely deserves to be on this list. Defensive lineman for the Steelers. Teron Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk, the two great offensive tackles for the Saints. Those were actually, I had those two in and I moved them off. Those were all the honorable mentions. Those are the really good players on this list that didn't even make it into the top 25, which just goes to show you again how talented the list of players is that Green Bay is going to be playing this upcoming season. So feel free to disagree with any of this list. I mean, I think this is list season, right? As we go in like the top 10 quarterbacks and the top 100 players in the NFL, or Pro Football Focus's top 101 players. Like, this is list season, right? And we all like trying to, label these players 1 to 100 or whatever it may be. But I think this is the fun conjecture of it, right? If you want to reorder any of these players and put them in any different order, feel free to do so. But here were my list of 25 players that I think, the top 25 players that Green Bay is going to face this upcoming season. Number 25 on my list is wide receiver Allen Robinson, Chicago Bears. He has just been so difficult to cover. When you match up a Jair Alexander against them, even Robinson's size can give Jair Alexander trouble. Robinson is a matchup nightmare for just about any corner in this league. We've seen enough of Allen Robinson, even with crappy quarterbacks for the Chicago Bears since he got there, still put up numbers upon numbers, still be dangerous at all times. So whether it's Justin Fields, whether it's Andy Dalton, you can bet that Allen Robinson is going to find ways to get open and will continue to do so, and will continue to be a pain for the Packers as well as every other team he faces this upcoming season. Wish, by the way, he would have chosen Green Bay as a free agent destination, would have allowed Green Bay to get Allen Robinson instead of Jimmy Graham. But neither here nor there. He ended up with the Bears, and that's why I don't feel sorry for him that he's always had bad quarterbacks, because he could have been playing with Aaron Rodgers this entire time. But I digress. Number 24 on my list may be a name that you're not as familiar with. Could very well argue that he should be even higher on this list, and that's Wyatt Teller, the offensive lineman for the Cleveland Browns. He plays guard. You can make an argument that he's the best guard in all of football. And, certainly Quentin Nelson is going to make a strong argument. And if I'm looking Quentin Nelson in the eye, I'm certainly not going to tell Quentin Nelson that he's not the best guard in football. But Wyatt Teller has every single right to that claim as well. He has been nothing short of extraordinary for the Browns when he's been healthy and active for them. He is a mauler. He can move people. He is a good pass protector. He is a fantastic run blocker. They found an absolute gem. I believe they got him from Buffalo, but Buffalo let him go a little bit too early, and the Browns picked up on it, and man, he has been fantastic for them. So number 24 on my list, Wyatt Teller. Number 23 on my list is J.J. Watt. And this is one of those where Maybe he could have been in the honorable mentions. Maybe he could be even higher. But when J.J. Watt is healthy, he is still a dominant force, which is why seemingly every Packer fan was hoping that the Packers were going to make a run at J.J. Watt this past offseason. Of course, it didn't happen. He ended up on the Arizona Cardinals playing with Chandler Jones, who is on my honorable mention list. That is going to be a very tough defensive line if both of those guys can stay healthy, which has been an issue as of late. But again, when J.J. Watt is healthy, he is going to influence the game and certainly still worthy of being on a list like this. Number 22 on my list is Dalvin Cook. And listen, Dalvin Cook has really come into his own the last couple seasons for Minnesota. Again, another player that needs to stay healthy, but when he is on the field, he is a dynamic runner. He's made Darnell Savage, who is a fantastic safety, look silly by erasing angles in the open field. Like, there's nothing that Cook can't do on the field from a running back standpoint. He's not exactly the best wide receiver, type back in the world, but he can still catch screen passes and turn them into big plays. He's dynamic between the tackles. He's dynamic outside of the tackles, can break tackles, can run past you. He's a fantastic running back and certainly another one of those players that's a pain to play 2 times per season. Number 21, you can say a lot of the same things. That's Nick Chubb, the running back for the Cleveland Browns. Again, another player that dynamic inside the tackles, dynamic outside the tackles, will absolutely run through you, but is fast, is physical, is aggressive, can cut when he needs to. Just a tremendous football player. Again, not somebody that you're going to throw to a ton down the field. It doesn't matter. He's that good anyway. And Cleveland's running game, again, behind Wyatt Teller and that, really good Browns offensive line, Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills and etc. Like J.C. Treader. That is a fantastic line. And, Nick Chubb is the beneficiary and one of the best running backs, if not the best running back in the league, running behind it. Number 20 on my list is quarterback Lamar Jackson. And I think the big thing with Jackson is he's just one of those players where, yes, we need to see still in a postseason game, can Lamar Jackson come through? Can he be the guy? Can he get you to a Super Bowl? Can he win you a Super Bowl? I think those are all questions that Lamar still needs to answer. But when you talk about a regular season game and we've got a 17-game schedule and you don't have the ability to game plan, quite as much in detail as you would in the postseason, Lamar Jackson is a nightmare, especially as an unscouted opponent, a guy you see once every 4 years. It's just, he is a nightmare to game plan against because he can run all over the field, but he can throw deep. He can throw with accuracy. Can he work on accuracy? Yes, but he's got everything at his disposal. And if you're not fully prepared for how to match up with that type of quarterback, again, it's going to be a long afternoon for you. So number 20 on my list, quarterback Lamar Jackson. Number 19 is Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu for the Kansas City Chiefs, safety, hybrid, slot guy, does everything. I made the mistake a few years ago of, when Earl Thomas was a free agent of, wanting the Packers to go after Earl Thomas. Earl Thomas was kind of one of the marquee players in that free agency class. And Tyrann Mathieu was, I think, kind of considered a step below Earl Thomas. Man, I was wrong. I think a lot of people were wrong that offseason. Honey Badger ended up being one of the premier free agents that season. Kansas City got an absolute steal. He's a big reason why they have a championship ring a couple seasons ago. Again, there's nothing he can't do. He's a playmaker. He is a ball hawk. He is a physical presence in the running game. He can do absolutely everything. Don't let his size fool you. Just a fantastic player. Number 18, you could put him higher on this list again, and I'm going to say that probably a lot. Again, just goes to show you how good this list is. Justin Jefferson, wide receiver, Minnesota Vikings. This is another player where maybe you'd like to see him string together a couple seasons before he's so high on this list. I saw enough a season ago. He is a nightmare to cover. He is great after the catch. He is a fantastic all-around wide receiver. The questions coming in was he going to be just a slot guy? He is not just a slot guy. He can do just about everything on the field, and I'm excited. As a football fan, I'm excited to see what Justin Jefferson can do in year 2. As a Packer fan, maybe not so much, but certainly deserving to be on this list. Number 17, Fred Warner, inside linebacker, San Francisco 49ers. The Packers games against the 49ers recently, Rodgers has gone on about Fred Warner. He's everywhere on the field. He makes everything more difficult. Sideline to sideline guy, can shoot gaps, can cover, just your all-around inside linebacker. Number 16, Khalil Mack. Again, another player you could probably put higher on this list. Dynamic edge rusher, can change the game in an instant. I think he's had more ups and downs, especially this last season, but even the last couple seasons, than maybe being quite the consistent disruptor that he has been at some points in his career. But still, you allow him to get any momentum and he will wreck a game, can force turnovers, force fumbles, get sacks, can drop in coverage if you need him to, can do just about everything. And again, a player that, you don't want to have to go against twice a season. Unfortunately, Green Bay has to. Number 15 is DK Metcalf, wide receiver, Seattle Seahawks. Maybe that's a little high for DK because, he's definitely more of a deep threat, but he's becoming more of a well-rounded all-around wide receiver. It's silly to think back of, some of the production and three-cone concerns that people had in college. I had him as a second-round grade, so I'm as guilty as anyone. But, man, he has been nothing short of spectacular in his career so far, continues to grow as a receiver. And if he takes another jump while he's still young, look the heck out because he's already dynamic. And if he gets more dynamic, it is a major problem. Number 14 on the list is Trent Williams, offensive tackle for the San Francisco 49ers. What a revitalization of his career he had a season ago playing for San Francisco. He was every bit as dominant as expected. Couldn't get by him as a pass rusher, couldn't get through him in run defense. He was blocking people off the screen. He looked like vintage Trent Williams coming back from a season off, and San Francisco signed him up to a huge, lucrative deal this offseason. Number 12 and 13, I am tying, and you can put them in any order you want. It's George Kittle and Travis Kelce, the two best tight ends in football. Kittle a little bit better blocker, Kelce a little bit better receiver. Whatever order you want to put them in, be my guest. I have them as kind of tied at number 12, so that's what I'm going to do here. But both of them phenomenal football players, and when Green Bay matches up against either of them, they're just such huge mismatches, and Green Bay will have to really be prepared for those two matchups. Number 11 on my list is Chase Young, edge rusher, Washington football team. Talk about a number one pick coming in as advertised. Chase Young was fantastic a season ago. That Washington football team defensive line with, Daron Payne and Montez Sweat and, obviously Chase Young, and the list goes up, Matt Ioannidis, and the entire list goes on and on and on. That front is one of the best singular, positional groups of any team in all of football, and Chase Young leads the way. Again, as advertised a season ago, can win with speed, can win with power, can win inside, can win outside, has multitude of different moves at his disposal to get past you. Not a guy that you want to consistently have to play against. He comes in at a number 11 on my list. Number 10 is Chris Jones, defensive lineman for the Kansas City Chiefs. All the things I just kind of said about Khalil Mack and about Chase Young, you can say from an interior player, Chris Jones on the inside. Physical presence. You do not want to get in a phone booth fight with Chris Jones. Just one of the guys that if you look at across the league, you would not want to pick a fight with. Mammoth human being, but with quickness, with size, with technique, just dominates on the interior, shuts down the running game, shuts down the interior of that defense or offense for the opposing team, and again can wreck a game in a moment's notice with pressure from the inside, which, as we know, is the quickest way to get to the quarterback. And Chris Jones is one of those players that can get there very, very quick. Number 9 on my list is DeAndre Hopkins. There's not much more to say about Hopkins and what he's been able to accomplish in this league. Still cannot believe how Arizona was able to rip off Houston in that trade. Kyler Murray, if he can take another step in his progression at quarterback, DeAndre Hopkins could even be potentially better. That Arizona offense has a lot of weapons. Hopkins leading the way. And again, just a matchup nightmare for smaller corners, even for, good, fast physical corners. It doesn't matter. Hopkins is going to find ways to win because he's just a refined overall wide receiver, certainly in the same league as the Devontae Adams and all the other top wide receivers in this league, but nobody wants to match up with Hopkins one-on-one. Number 8 on my list is Myles Garrett, edge rusher from the Cleveland Browns. Had the suspension a couple seasons ago for the whole incident with Pittsburgh. Came back last year, super motivated. You could just tell, finally living up to that number one pick expectations. He was a man possessed a season ago with how he was as an edge rusher. Again, Green Bay's offensive tackles are going to have their work cut out from them. A lot of edge rushers on this list, but Myles Garrett might just be one of the best, if not the best. And guess what? The next 2 on my list, also edge rushers. Number 7 is the next one. That's TJ Watt. Obviously, a lot of Packer fans familiar with him from his time as a Wisconsin Badger. to me, TJ Watt was one of the all-time easy evals. You could see all the raw talent in college, and he hadn't even put together a game plan or know how to be a real true edge rusher yet, and he was still getting to the quarterback. In the NFL, he refines his move set, becomes bigger, stronger, faster. The results have been nothing short of fantastic and amazing. Arguably the Steelers' best overall player. TJ Watt's really come into his own as one of the best edge rushers and best defenders in all of football. Number 6 is Nick Bosa. Man, when he has been healthy, again, talk about another player who's lived up to the billing and lived up to the expectations. Bosa has been an absolute nightmare when Green Bay's had to match up with him. Completely dominates games. He's such an interesting player where doesn't exactly have the speed or the strength of a Chase Young, a Myles Garrett, some of those players, but his technique is just phenomenal. His hands are so quick, can win on the inside, can win on the outside. He can do just about everything. And of all the players, all the edge rushers I just mentioned, to me, Bosa is the one that can wreck the game the quickest and more importantly, can wreck it consistently throughout the course of a game and the course of a season. Number 5 on my list is Jalen Ramsey, corner for the Rams. Just another player who can do just about everything on the back end of the defense. Play on the slot, play on the outside, play as a safety, play as a star. Like, you could play him at linebacker if you wanted to. This is the closest player to Charles Woodson and what he could do as a slot player that I've ever seen since Woodson. Being able to blitz off the edge, set the edge as a run defender, cover in the slot, cover on the outside, man-to-man, zone, press, back to safety. It doesn't matter. Ramsey can do it all. And again, that's as high a praise as I can possibly get because there's no player I respect more in my time, as a Packer fan or just as a football fan than Charles Woodson. Number 4 on the list is Tyreek Hill. I don't know how you defend this guy. You have to play off of him, so then they just get him quick, short passes, and he can still take those to the house at any given moment. You play the short pass, he can run right by you and is a threat to go deep at any given moment. He's like, players get labeled as cheat codes all the time, and it's not always true. Tyreek Hill is a legitimate cheat code. I don't know how you defend him. Even putting 2 guys on him isn't an easy task. Like, that's how good this guy is, and then you pair him with Patrick Mahomes, put a Travis Kelce in there, Clyde Edwards-Helaire running back. The weapons are all there. It makes you not be able to just focus on Tyreek Hill where he should be the guy that you're absolutely focused on. Number 3, Russell Wilson. Wilson is so talented that even at times where Seattle hasn't had an offensive line or hasn't had the weapons surrounding him, Wilson is able to go out and make plays and win games on his own. He's an MVP caliber player anytime he steps foot on the field, anytime that he plays the entirety of the season. He is the reason that Seattle stays relevant, even though that roster isn't quite as strong as it once was. He's a phenomenal football player and definitely somebody that is going to be another tough matchup when Green Bay goes against him again this upcoming season. Number 2 on the list, and certainly would be worthy of number 1 on any given list, is Aaron Donald. I don't need to tell you about Aaron Donald. You know everything there is to know about him. Arguably, and I've seen a lot of phenomenal defenders, and I get that, the Lawrence Taylors and things like that, Reggie White. You can make a strong argument that Aaron Donald's the best defender. I'll make the strong argument that Aaron Donald's the best defender that I've ever seen in my time watching football. He is that good, winning on the inside. The fact that the idea that he can't be a run defender is ridiculous, but it doesn't even matter. Even if he was a terrible run defender, what he can do as a pass rusher on the inside of a defense, matched up on anyone, nobody can hang with this guy. Green Bay, I think, caught a break last year that he just wasn't himself, but man, he can wreck literally every game that he is in. And of course, number 1 on the list is Patrick Mahomes. Hopefully Aaron Rodgers is a Packer for a variety of reasons, but that Mahomes-Rodgers matchup that we were hoping to see a couple of years back did not present itself. Now we get to see one again this year if everything goes according to plan and Aaron Rodgers is in fact a Green Bay Packer. Should be an amazing matchup. Mahomes is, again, as good as it gets at quarterback and certainly worthy of being number 1 on this overall list. Hope you enjoyed the list and the top 25 players. Maybe you didn't because you realized just how many talented players Green Bay has to go against this upcoming season, but should make for some really great matchups. And you always want to see these special players that are in their prime playing the best football. You let your Jair Alexanders and Aaron Rodgers and David Bakhtiaris and et cetera, go up and see how they do against those matchups. That's really what the sport is about. That's really what makes it fun. So thanks for joining me today. Appreciate it as always. I'll be right back here tomorrow with an all new episode. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.